Hello everyone, I am Be Better Gamer. Welcome to Be Better Gamer Wrestling, your place for videos of the Aki developed N64 wrestling games, WCW NW Revenge, Virtual Pro Wrestling 2, and like today's episode, WWF No Mercy. I am starting my Hardcore Championship Let's Play series, and I am beginning with the first ever Hardcore Champion, Mankind. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you check out some of the other videos. If this is your first time watching this channel, welcome. Thank you for watching. I like to do these Let's Plays. I like to talk about sort of the historical context of what was going on in wrestling around the time these games were developed, or maybe a little bit before and even afterwards. I like to mix it up a little bit. I am going to be doing the Hardcore Championship. I've already wrapped up the Light Heavyweight Championship, European Championship, and the Intercontinental Championship. And obviously I chose Mankind because he was the first Hardcore Champion. I'm going to do something a little bit different with this Let's Play series. So I've been doing something a little bit different with every Let's Play series. For the Light Heavyweight Championship, I went through like I went through all the people who held the Light Heavyweight Championship the most times. I sort of did something similar to that with the European Championship. The Intercontinental Championship, I did all the wrestlers who held the title during the year 2000, from like November of 99 to November of 2000, around the time No Mercy was being developed up until its release. And I decided for the Hardcore Championship, I was going to jump around a little bit. I was going to jump around for people who held the title, the most, people who had significant runs worth mentioning, and just play around a little bit, do a little different things. Obviously, Mankind is a very unique individual when it comes to the history of the Hardcore Championship, because it was given to him first. He was the first Hardcore Champion, right? But his actually story with the Hardcore Championship was really only a plot device, and we're going to get into a little bit of that. I decided, as you can see right now, I'm facing Gerald Briscoe in the first match, and I decided to go with the original Mankind outfit. So you can buy the original Mankind shirt and boots in the SmackDown Mall. Just earn some money from the Championship Paths or Survivor Mode, and then just go buy it in the SmackDown Mall. I gave him some knee pads and some wrist tape. Very easy outfit to make, so it's not that hard. So if you want to recreate it, you don't have to give him the knee pads. I just decided to give him the knee pads to give him a little bit more of that early Mankind feel when he did have the knee pads. But yeah, that's why I decided to do that, because I'm probably going to do another Mankind run when I do my WWF World Championship Series, because a lot of the storylines leading up to the release of WrestleMania 2000, especially in the beginning of 2000, revolved around Mick Foley's retirement and one last match for the World Championship, being included in the best, in the four-way WrestleMania 2000 main event. So I'm probably gonna do a World Championship run, so I figured I'd save the Mick Foley outfit. I'll probably actually just play as Mick Foley, and give him the Mick Foley outfit as opposed to playing as Mankind when I do that. So that's why I wanted to do Mankind in his original look. So I want to talk about Mankind's early days in WWF a little bit, and how that led into the Hardcore Championship, and how that set the foundation for the Hardcore Championship. The title was only active for 4 years in WWF, and I'm going to talk about that too, why I think that was. From 1998 to 2002. And the initial rules for the Hardcore Championship was that it would only be defended in a hardcore type match. Whatever that meant. Could have been a false count anywhere, no DQ, anything goes, last man standing, whatever they could come up with. That was the Hardcore Championship match. There I go, pulling out Mr. Sacco. Trying to pull out Mr. Sacco. Actually, it's fun to play as Mankind in this Hardcore Championship path, because the mandible claw, it's an interesting move, because with rope break, you get rope break a lot on this move, and it's one of those finishers, again, like you only have one time to do it with the submission. So you're trying to work on their head throughout the whole match, like I was doing with Briscoe, doing some sleeper holds and things like that, so that when you pull off the mandible claw, you're going to want to make them tap right away. At least with the Hardcore Championship, I'm going to get involved in a lot of Hardcore Championship matches where the rules, you false count anywhere. So that's great, because then I could do that submission finisher outside of the ring, not worry about rope break. So that's one of the benefits with playing as Mankind in the Hardcore Championship. It really serves his finisher very well. Just make sure you work on, the head while you're playing the match. So anyway, so the initial rules for the Hardcore Championship, any kind of hardcore match, the title would be defended in. But when Crash Holly won the title in February of 2000, he instituted the 24/7 rule, where it could be defended anywhere, anytime. And of course, hilarity ensued, hijinks ensued because of that. But it wasn't always the case. It wasn't always the 24/7 rule. I'll talk about more of the 24/7 rule when I do the Crash Holly Hardcore Championship Let's Play, which I will be doing eventually. I'll get to it. Raven has the most title reigns with 27. 27 times Raven won it. Obviously, most of those reigns were under the 24/7 rule. Big Boss Man has the longest individual reign with 97 days, which means no one ever held the Hardcore Championship more than 100 days. So I'll definitely get more into Big Boss Man's run and Raven's run, actually, when I do Hardcore Championship Let's Plays later on with them. Raven obviously is not in this game, but you can make a pretty good Raven, and I've done that. I think I've already recorded the footage. I just got to do audio for that. So you'll be seeing a Raven call soon. When? I don't know. Few more episodes. And the original title, the original Hardcore Championship, was made to look like an old, beat up, broken apart WWF World Championship. The old Winged Eagle is what they nicknamed it a lot of the times. At least I nicknamed that the championship. That's the championship I first remember, was the Winged Eagle Championship. And it was like duct taped together. And it just had like Hardcore Championship written across it. Very inventive looking title, if you think about it. Very creative looking title. I always dug the way it looked because it fit, the Hardcore Champion. Eventually the title was unified with the IC Championship on an episode of Raw in August of 2002, when the Intercontinental Champion RVD defeated the Hardcore Champion Tommy Dreamer in a ladder match. Very fitting that the Hardcore Championship went out that way. And Rob Van Dam, spoilers, it's another call I'm gonna make for the Hardcore Championship run. So a lot of teasers already. I'm giving you a lot of teasers. I don't mind talking about what I plan on doing. I have it all mapped out. I have every single participant I'm gonna use for the Hardcore Championship Let's Play. It's gonna be a very fun, very exciting series, and hopefully I will finish it before the summertime. That's my goal. I want to finish the Hardcore Championship before the summer. I don't want to do what I did last summer and start the Intercontinental Championship and then finish it 1 year later like I did. I just recently finished the Intercontinental Championship, and I started that at the end of the summer last year. I promise, guys and gals, I promise I won't do that with the Hardcore Championship. We're going to get through this. We're going to get through it to the end of the summer. So I hope you're ready for a lot of Hardcore Championship talk. Which apparently people are. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about possibly bringing back the Hardcore Championship. If WWE were to leave the TV PG, go back to TV 14, would they bring it back? I mean, obviously they've been messing around with a lot more hardcore type matches. As I record this, a couple of weeks ago, we had the Asylum match with Dean Ambrose and Jericho took that awesome thumbtack spot where Dean Ambrose threw his back onto the thumbtacks and then finished him off with the DDT onto the thumbtacks. So that was a pretty hardcore spot. That's something you saw back in the day. Obviously the thumbtacks were brought in by Mick Foley, but he was no stranger to that. With all the Japanese death matches he was involved with, they definitely used thumbtacks in ECW. You saw stuff like that go down. So, blood has been popping up a lot more in big moments, and so it's gonna be interesting. And I'll talk about a lot of that throughout the series, about whether or not, the good and the bad of the Hardcore Championship. This is actually a very interesting matchup. So we got Mankind against Crash Holly, and two very different stories when it comes to the Hardcore Championship. So, Mankind, he was brought into the WWF originally as an opponent for The Undertaker. Jim Ross has gone on record to say he was always a fan of Mick Foley, especially when he was Cactus Jack in WCW, and he always kept an eye on him, and he knew, when Jim Ross was fired, essentially, let go from WCW, and then started working for WWE, and then eventually became one of the talent scouts, he knew that he needed to get Mankind in the WWF at the time, and he wanted him to be an opponent for The Undertaker. He felt like he would be a good opponent, very diverse style. Vince McMahon didn't want any part of Mick Foley, Cactus Jack in WWF, but eventually Jim Ross got him to agree to sign Mick Foley, and Vince McMahon declared, all right, damn it, but he's got to wear a mask. So even though Mick Foley is not a bad looking guy, but I guess just McMahon, he just wanted to put a mask on him. He wanted probably to move away from the Cactus Jack persona. When Mankind was coming into the WWF, it was very cartoony. It was very, very PG. I mean, people complain about the PG era now, and honestly, the PG era now is not as bad as you go back watch 94, 95 WWF. I mean, with the exception of Shawn Michaels, like guys like Shawn Michaels and Diesel and Bret Hart trying to push the envelope, there was so much crap essentially, because of the PG era. Everyone had all these stupid gimmicks that were like occupation gimmicks. Like one guy was a janitor, one guy was a hockey player, one guy was just just stupid stuff. So bringing in Cactus Jack, Jim Ross felt that not only was going to give Undertaker a worthy opponent, because let's face it, Undertaker really, up until that point, after Hogan, after his brief feuds with Hogan and Jake the Snake and Ultimate Warrior, after that, Undertaker wasn't really doing much of anything. He didn't really have any significant feuds, anything to really help establish Undertaker as one of the top stars in WWF. So he needed a threat, and Mankind was that threat. A new alter ego that Mick Foley created. He lived in the boiler rooms. He rocked back and forth when he talked. He had like a pet mouse that he talked to, a pet rat that he talked to. He would go into the ring, and he would wrestle that very aggressive style that he wrestled as Cactus Jack in WCW and around the world, but he would also add more of he would do more character work, essentially. He would pull his hair in the ring, he would hit himself, he would scream in pain and then try to hurt himself. It was fascinating to watch, to say the least. I remember watching Mankind as a kid and being kind of like freaked out by him, being a little disturbed by him, and his feud with The Undertaker established him as a threat, because that's when they started doing a lot of hardcore type matches. And again, a lot of this stuff you weren't really seeing in WWF. Yeah, you had the ladder match between Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon, but that was like a once in a time kind of thing. When Mankind and Undertaker started fighting, it was a lot of like chairs were being involved, table spots were being used, they were brawling into the outside, very aggressive stuff. And it really led up to their first main pay-per-view bout, which was the Boiler Room Brawl. And that was, where Mankind lived. So it was a boiler room brawl. They fought backstage in a boiler room, essentially, and they beat the crap out of each other with whatever they found. And they used everything from like pipes and chairs and boxes and crates and all this stuff. The whole goal of the match was to get to the middle of the ring and get the Undertaker's urn. And Undertaker eventually got to the ring first, but Paul Bearer turned on him, and Mankind was able to defeat Undertaker and now aligned himself with Paul Bearer. So that early feud with The Undertaker not only established Mankind as a character, but it also established WWF pushing the envelope in terms of actually, embracing hardcore matches. A little promotion called ECW was making a lot of noise at the time, and even WCW, if you look at a lot of their stuff, it was a lot more edgy, a lot more, aggressive. So for WWF to go in that direction, it was like, it was very bold for them at the time. It was uncharted waters. And really, the whole WWF hardcore movement was led by Mankind, kind of indirectly, because he was really the guy after The Undertaker, every single feud that he was involved in revolved around some sort of hardcore style match. You know, he faced Shawn Michaels for the championship at In Your House Mind Games 1996, and that was a very aggressive match, very intense physical match. You could kind of say that was kind of a little bit of like a hardcore match. You know, again, hardcore in 1996 WWF compared to like 2000 hardcore, world's different, but you definitely saw the beginnings there. You know, he would face Undertaker again, and this time in a Buried Alive match. It was the first Buried Alive match, and again, it was a hardcore style match. It was, you know, no DQ, no count out, had a special gimmick to win it. You know, they weren't calling these matches hardcore matches, but it was like, you know, false count anywhere, you know, anything goes, last man standing. You know, it's just they just found other ways to call it. I think they didn't want to call it hardcore because ECW had already taken the hardcore, you know, tagline with Tommy Dreamer, you know, hard saying he's the king of hardcore, whatever. You know, Sandman, like, he's hardcore was like one of the big chants you heard all the time in WCW. So I mean WCW and ECW. So maybe that's why they didn't want to do it, but they were very obviously trying to embrace that style because it was getting popular and fans were kind of hungry for it. I mean, they were tired of just everyone being this cookie cutter babyface, or even like, you know, the dastardly heel who twirls his mustache. That's why the NWO was so popular, because they were different, they were edgy, it seemed more realistic. And to have, I think if anything, WWF had the biggest advantage because they had Mick Foley, and he was the most legit hardcore wrestler on the planet, maybe next to Terry Funk. But he had, you know, but he was a lot younger than Terry Funk at the time. You know, double arm DDT through the tables. I love the table spots in this game in WWF No Mercy. I love how the table just also like just disappears after you use it. But you know, so they were really, so Jim Ross, you know, foresight, he had incredible foresight because he knew how important Mankind was going to be, not just because Mick Foley was a good wrestler and a great entertainer, but he just knew that he had that something special that no one else could do. Obviously, when people think about Mankind and early Mankind, we all think about the King of the Ring 1998, the Hell in a Cell, the second ever Hell in a Cell match. Undertaker versus Mankind. Right at the beginning of the match, Undertaker throws Mankind off of the Hell in a Cell. This is a hardcore match. This is a match that was made for someone like Mankind. Shawn Michaels and Undertaker's first Hell in a Cell match was really good, and I highly recommend watching that match if you've never seen it. You can get it on the WWE Network. And you know, I think it's kind of gotten forgotten a little bit because of the Mankind Undertaker match. When people think of Hell in a Cells, that's the one they always remember. You know, it's definitely the most memorable. Is it the best wrestled match? No. Is it the best match of psychology in the Hell in a Cell? No. You can argue that the Shawn Michaels Undertaker match had the best psychology. A few other Hell in a Cell matches were really good, but Mankind Undertaker, that like set the bar in a way for, you know, what you can expect in terms of hardcore wrestling in the WWF or in any promotion. And who was going to top that? Because not only was it this crazy match type that was so dangerous, but what Mankind did, what Mick Foley did, no one else was going to top, because he was already all around the world doing stuff that people wouldn't do, diving outside from the apron. He used to do this diving elbow from the apron to the concrete. Okay, back in the day when there was concrete, they didn't put pads out on the sides of the ring. So when he was in WCW, when he was in all these other promotions, he was diving, putting his body on the line, you know, concrete, just dropping elbows, and he, you know, wrestling in the Japanese death matches over in Japan, winning the 1995 King of the Death Match tournament, you know, where him and Terry Funk were just a bloodied mess by the end because they had finished fighting so many other hardcore matches where you're talking about barbed wire ropes, Okay, they had fluorescent light bulbs. They had these thumbtack boards with like nails and thumbtacks sticking out of it, barbed wire boards that they just set up in the corner. They replaced, so what's worse than concrete is when you put mats on the outside, but on top of the mats it's just barbed wire or just broken glass. That's what they used. Okay, this is like legit. Guys could have died in the ring, and Cactus Jack won that tournament. Okay, he didn't get more legit than him. So how can you challenge that? How can you challenge the king of the death match being in the Hell in the Cell and getting thrown off and then falling through the top and continuing the match and then getting the thumbtacks? It's just, there's no way. So already Mankind was bringing that to the WWF. But again, all his feuds, if it was Austin, if it was Triple H, if it was, and this is even before the Hardcore Championship, okay? When Mankind went through the many faces of Foley gimmicks, when he went through Dude Love, when he went through Cactus Jack, they were still all hardcore matches. He had that steel cage match with Stone Cold Steve Austin. He had that Falls Count Anywhere match with Steve Austin. The last man standing matches and things like that. So he was already being involved in all these hardcore matches, sometimes for the world title, depending on who he was facing, but just in general, because he was known, that's what he was known for, so he set the bar very high. And so that brings us to the Hardcore Championship. So Mankind's getting a following, and right when he's kind of getting this following, he aligns himself with Vince McMahon and the corporation. That was like the gimmick in 1998. Vince McMahon with the corporation, they were trying to keep Austin back, hold Austin back, and they stripped Austin of the title. So at Survivor Series 98, just a few months after the Hell in the Cell, they held a WWF Championship tournament, and Vince McMahon, his number one pick was Mankind. He didn't like being around Mankind. The whole relationship between Mr. McMahon, the character on screen, and Mankind on screen was that, Mr. McMahon didn't really care for Mankind. He didn't really get upset if he got hurt or he hurt himself. He just knew he would do whatever it takes to please Mr. McMahon. So he was using that to his advantage. So he was, always dangling the carrot in front of him. That's kind of where the Dude Love gimmick came about, because it was a real gimmick that Mick Foley had created as a teenager, with his aspirations for being a professional wrestler. But later on, they worked it into the storylines that McMahon, gave him the ability to be Dude Love as long as he did his bidding and stuff like that. So the Survivor Series tournament is gonna happen, but before that, to reward Mankind for his services, Vince McMahon says, before I give you the World Championship, I'm gonna give you something else. Here's the Hardcore Championship, and he gave him the Hardcore Championship, and that's probably why it was an old, beat up WWF title, because he didn't want Mankind to be his champion, but he wanted Mankind to do his dirty work, and Mankind, wanted to be champion. So to appease him, he gave him a championship, all right. He gave him a WWF Championship, all right, but he just called it the Hardcore Championship, and it was an old broken wing. And so it's kind of symbolic if you think about it, and not just in terms of it being like Hardcore Championship, so it looks broken, but symbolic in the terms of who it was given to. It was given to Mick Foley. It was given to Mankind. Vince McMahon's character was like, I don't want him to be my world champion, so I'm gonna give him this old broken world championship belt, and I'll call it the Hardcore Championship so that he could feel special, like it was made especially for him. So that's, really, if you look at it story wise, that's where you get the Hardcore Championship from. So it takes on a whole nother meaning when you look at it that way. And Mankind defended it. He defended the title only a few times. So he defended the very next week in a hardcore match against Ken Shamrock, and it was a very modest hardcore match in terms of, when you think of the legacy of Mankind. But this is Raw, and it was all really leading up to Survivor Series, really, with what was going to happen with Mankind. Mankind ends up winning the matches, although he didn't win the match on his own. He had help from the Corporation. Bossman attacked Ken Shamrock on the entrance to the Titantron, just like how I've been fighting with the Acolytes at the entrance of the SmackDown Titantron, trying to get the momentum in my favor. You know, Farouk can taunt all he wants, but the more I have Bradshaw out there, the more I can work on him so that I could eventually hit the Mandible Claw and get an easy win. But, you know, it's never really easy facing the Acolytes in these Let's Play, or in these Championship Path, I should say, these Handicap Championship Path matches. It's always very challenging for some reason when you fight them. When you fight them and when you fight Vince and Shane, those are always challenging handicap matches. Here I go, giving Farouk his own special on him, because I know I haven't really been working on Farouk too much. I've been working more so on Bradshaw. And this is kind of the issue with doing a handicap match when your finisher is a submission, because you know you got to make sure both the guys are down, and so the other guy doesn't come in and break it. But right there, you know, Farouk didn't even need to break it because I still got a ways to go to work on Bradshaw. So I'm definitely in for a challenge in this match. So he would beat Ken Shamrock, or he would win the match against Ken Shamrock with the assistance of the Corporation. And then following that, he would enter the Survivor Series Deadly Game tournament. And I uploaded some of the Deadly Game matches, no commentary, just matches, from WrestleMania 2000, because the Survivor Series arena in WrestleMania 2000 is the Survivor Series arena from the Deadly Game tournament. So check out some of those, you know, quick matches I did from WrestleMania 2000. And he entered the tournament, so you can see him entering with his Hardcore Championship. But he's thinking that this is just a placeholder because I'm going to get the World Championship. Vince McMahon has promised me I'm winning this tournament. And he makes it all the way to the finals. You know, his first opponent is like Dwayne Gill. That was like his surprise opponent, was like Dwayne Gill, and stuff like that. So he had a very easy, you know, kind of way into the finals of the tournament, where he ends up facing The Rock. And The Rock's a good guy at this point, you know, no longer with the Nation. He's now a good guy. And towards the end of the match, The Rock puts Mankind in the sharpshooter, and Vince McMahon calls from the bell, and The Rock wins the match. So it's a recreation of the actual Montreal Screwjob that happened at Survivor Series. And they do it again, but this time Vince McMahon screwed his own corporate member. He screwed Mankind and declares The Rock as the new corporate champion. So this was a really big reveal, really big surprise. And when you look back on it, it really worked out perfectly. The whole goal was to set up The Rock as the corporate champion so that you would have The Rock versus Stone Cold at WrestleMania, which is what happened. But when Vince McMahon turned on Mankind and betrayed him, people started to care even more about the Mankind character, because really what Vince McMahon was doing was like abuse, was like mental abuse for Mankind. And this was a character who was already supposed to be pretty screwed up. I mean, he had these alternate personalities. He's getting thrown off the Hell in a Cell. He's involved in all these hardcore matches, and it's like, man, you stole the title off of him. Like, he actually could have done it. You know, he had a great match with The Rock. So that's where it turned for Mankind. When Mankind, following that, he would distance himself from Corporation. He would quit the Corporation, I should say. And that's when the rise of Mankind really truly happened in the eyes of the fans, you know, including myself. But you definitely saw it happen there. It was like overnight. It was instant. You know what I mean? Just like how The Rock instantly became the most hated guy in the company, Mankind became the most, you know, compassionate character in the company. People loved Austin. They're always going to love Austin. And, you know, you could debate whether or not if they loved Mankind more than Austin. But they definitely, you know, you just watch the next Raws when Mankind shows up. Everyone's cheering for him now. Everyone's rooting for him now. So it was very cool how that was done. Looking back on it, very good storytelling. How it led up all to that. This is an interesting handicap match, right? S.A. Rios and Mark Henry. I just think that's funny. So now you have the Hardcore Championship is still an actual title now. So now Vince McMahon, to make Mankind regret quitting the corporation, because he wanted Mankind to stay in the corporation and do his bidding, but not give him the championship. And Mankind was upset about being betrayed, so he said, no, screw you, I'm out. So now Vince McMahon was going to take the Hardcore Championship away from him. But what he was going to do that is that he tried to set up Mankind in a series of matches, causing him to lose it. So the first match, a week after Survivor Series, he would put Mankind in a triple threat Hardcore Championship match with Ken Shamrock and Big Boss Man. But really, since Ken Shamrock also had just recently turned to the corporation, it was really a handicap match. So it's kind of fitting that I'm doing all these handicap matches. He had this handicap championship match, essentially, even though it was billed as a triple threat against Big Boss Man and Ken Shamrock. But they were unsuccessful in taking the title off of him that night on Raw because the Job Squad interfered. Too Cold Scorpio, Hardcore Holly, and I believe Al Snow. They came in, they interfered, they helped Mankind win. So Mankind won that match, and so they kept trying to take this title away from them. So the next attempt was on the December 28th episode of Raw, where Mankind had to defend the Hardcore Championship against Big Boss Man in a ladder match. So leading up to this whole time, whole month, Mankind was feuding with The Rock. He was feuding with the corporation, and he was just a thorn in Vince McMahon's side. So once again to try to rub salt in the wound, another final attempt. This time, Shawn Michaels, who was the commissioner, put the match up. He put a ladder match for Big Boss Man against Mankind. And during the match, The Rock comes out, and The Rock attacks Mankind blatantly in the match. It's a hardcore match. It's a ladder match, so it's it's part of the rules, but causes Mankind to lose that match. And again, it's setting up the underdog story. Mankind has been beaten, and he's put his body on the line. He's put his life on the line for Vince McMahon, for the corporation, and then he gets his moment of truth, his WWF Championship. He gets it taken away. He gets his faux WWF Championship, the Hardcore Championship, taken away. So now he's got nothing. He's got no allies. It's just him against the world. And that all would lead up to the Mankind getting World Championship title shot on the January 4th episode of Raw and winning the World Championship. Very big milestone. If you haven't already seen it, go see it. When Mankind wins, it was the night that turned the tide in the war of WCW versus WWF, because WCW, WWF Raw was taped at that time, so WCW spoiled the ending. I was like, oh, if you turn to WWF right now, you'll see Mankind win the WWF Championship. Yeah, good luck with that, or whatever. He said some snide remark, and then everyone changed the channel and watched Mankind win the championship. Huge moment. You can watch it on the network. You can watch all these Mankind matches on the network. And so, yeah, you'd never see Mankind do that. Stealing S.A. Rios' flipping DDT. But it was a big moment. It was a big moment for Mankind. So really, the Hardcore Championship, if you think about it, was just a plot device for Mankind's rise to popularity in the WWF. It was a plot device for, Mankind being part of the storyline of Vince McMahon and the corporation being this terrible thing, but they couldn't use Austin all the time, especially because I think Austin was taking some time off because of injury, so you only saw him pop in and out here and there. And he, Austin made his appearance in that match at the end, helping, Mankind win, hitting Rock with a steel chair. And it's set up Mankind as being one of the top, most popular characters in WWF. And this is interesting, right? Mankind against Cactus Jack. So it's a mirror match. And really, because when you're doing the Hardcore Championship, when you do this path, you unlock Cactus Jack this way. But I already had unlocked Cactus Jack because of survival mode, so this doesn't really affect me. But I think it's kind of cool we get this mirror match, and I think it's kind of fitting because we're getting to the end of the episode. And so really, if you look at the beginnings of the Hardcore Championship, it really was just a prop, if you will. I don't like to use that term when I talk about titles, but it really was a prop in the storyline that was Mankind, the Corporation, The Rock, and then eventually Stone Cold Steve Austin. It's not like The Rock and Mankind ever fought for the Hardcore Championship, but during that whole feud, they would have a couple of last man standing matches. They would have that I Quit match at Royal Rumble 99, where The Rock would regain the World Heavyweight Championship run. A very brutal match, where The Rock gave him like a million chair shots to the head, and Mick Foley's family was in the audience. Leading into WrestleMania 2000, and I'll talk more about it during the World Heavyweight Championship. But you had that Hell in a Cell match with Triple H, that retirement match. You had that that hardcore match with the street fight with Cactus Jack and Triple H. So after Mankind had became this lovable figure, Cactus Jack became more of like when Mick Foley was going back into the well. He was going back into the hardcore, persona of his. And the Mankind character really transitioned more into just, the Mick Foley being Mick Foley character. You know what I mean? And then he would use Cactus Jack, and very few appearances of Dude Love after that. I think maybe 1 or 2 appearances, but they weren't really like, I'm bringing back Dude Love to beat you up. He would always, that's when he would pull the Cactus Jack card. So Mankind, aka Mick Foley, is usually what he got referred to, and then eventually they just always referred to him as Mick Foley. But the Cactus Jack character would always come back, and then even after that whole World Heavyweight Championship where Mankind was supposed to retire, he would still have all these infamous hardcore championship match, not hardcore championship, but like hardcore matches. The WrestleMania match with Edge, the match with Randy Orton at Backlash, the match with Ric Flair. So he would always kind of come back and do these big hardcore matches, and it's amazing when you think about it, because we're going to talk about it more in some of the upcoming episodes, but after Mankind had the Hardcore Championship, it almost seemed like, what could they do? How could they make this Hardcore Championship mean something, when really the guy who was probably the most worthy of it, it wasn't really important to his story. He didn't need a hardcore championship to solidify his hardcore status, and he never fought for it again. He had like one other match before he won the world championship against Road Dogg for the hardcore championship after Road Dogg took it from Bossman, but that's it. He never really fought for the hardcore championship again. So very interesting beginnings, when we look at it, and when we think about Cactus Jack, the king of hardcore, the first ever hardcore champion. But that hardcore championship didn't really mean much to solidify him. He already had done so much in WWF, not counting his WCW and Japanese days, but he already had done so much in the WWF that he didn't really need that hardcore championship, and they only really gave it to him as this plot device, so that when he got screwed out of the world championship and turned his back to the corporation, Vince McMahon can go to him and try to take everything that he loves from him, and that being the hardcore championship, which at its core was a broken world heavyweight championship. So not only did he lose the world championship, but he's getting this broken championship. Very symbolic stuff, very powerful stuff, very effective storytelling. And they, in a way, they kind of peaked with the meaningfulness of the hardcore championship, because again, eventually we would get to the 24/7 rule. And even though there have been a lot of good hardcore matches, I think the significance of the hardcore championship began and ended with Mick Foley, and I think that's a shame because I do think there was a lot of potential, but more on that next time. We'll talk more about, we got plenty more episodes to come. I hope you enjoyed this Let's Play. I hope you enjoyed my matches. I tried to do as many hardcore spots, obviously, because I'm playing with the king of hardcore, so I tried to do as many table spots as possible, but there you go, first hardcore championship in the bag. This is YouTube. You know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe. And yeah, I promise we're going to get through the summer. We're going to get through this title path. It's going to be great. Looking forward to it. I'm glad I have over 500 subscribers. My channel is growing and getting better. I can't wait. So yeah, until next time, thank you for watching. I am Be Better Gamer. And as always, watch all the wrestling.